Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be working on the Silica GT4's bottom end. As you know, the crank went off for a regrind in the last video. So today we're going to be preparing the bottom end really for reassembly. It consists of us cleaning it, going over it, making sure there's no damage, cleaning up the sump, getting all the metal filings out, cleaning up the bottom end casing, the oil splash guard, the oil pickup, getting everything really nice and clean so that when we do get the crank back, all we have to do is check the tolerances and hopefully reassemble the bottom end. So I've got a few basic tools to do the job of cleaning up this engine block and also the rest of the bottom end components, and that is some white spirits, some black paint for when we come to painting the block, masking tape to protect the areas that we need protecting, wire brushes, brake cleaner, I got some degreaser, I've got a variety of different products to clean and I'll use them on the appropriate components. So let's get the wire brushes out and start giving this a clean. This is really bad. All this corrosion. I don't know if the water pump was leaking or something beforehand, but you can see that the salt built really high up. Now my plan is to actually put a litre of white spirits into this container, use a brush and just keep cleaning it, and as it runs off it's just going to run back into the container. Then I can brush it down again and just repeat the process until all the dirt has been lifted. Now instead of a wire brush, this time I'm going to use a paintbrush. I'm just going to repeat this process over and over for about half an hour. It's harsh enough to take off like gasket material, but it's not harsh enough to score the iron. So you can actually use it like this to remove the head gasket material. That's why when you buy a pack of these engine cleaning brushes, they come in 3 different materials. So I'm going to go through the whole of this now, remove all of the old gasket material. So I finished cleaning up the engine block with the white spirits, and I've also removed the head gasket residue. Now there is a possibility that this head gasket has also contributed to the failure of this engine. Now these engines are supposed to have multi-layered metal head gaskets on. It actually had like a fibrous head gasket, like a rubbery type of material. And not only that, this engine isn't supposed to have silicone sealant on the head gasket, but the reason I had so much difficulty cleaning this up was because the head gasket had actually been siliconed onto the block, and it's not supposed to be. So anyway, it's all off now, and the deck is in pretty good condition, and I've checked it with my straight edge and it is very flat. So I'm just gonna basically now, with brake cleaner, clean up the block even further. Now we've got the majority of the stuff off with the terps. This is the bit that's had the brake cleaner. This is the bit that hasn't. So all of the white spirits has eaten the thick gunk that the brake cleaner won't get into. The brake cleaner does give it that final sort of degrease, so there's dry as a bone now. There's no oil on there at all. So I'll do this off camera because it's not rocket science, and I'll update you in a bit. So here we have the block. The oil splash guard's nice and clean now. Had to get it really clean, get all the grease off it, because the grease will actually hold any metal filings to that. So there was bits of copper from when obviously the bottom end spun, and getting it completely spotless and degreased. There's no metal now stuck to that. So we have the bolts here that would hold that to the inside of the block. So these are the cleaned parts. Now I just got to do the lower side casing for the engine block, get all this silicone off, degrease all these bolts, make sure there's no silicone on them so that they can be sort of reassembled. As you can see, there's just silicone everywhere in this engine, because these little bits of silicone, when you're sealing up the engine, if you put too much on, you know, that can like fall off inside the engine, and because it's rubber, it doesn't really get munched up by the bearings, and it just sort of blocks up the hole really, and the oil pressure will drop. So anyway, we're going to clean this up. I'm just using the brass brush. It's taking off the silicone and it's not damaging the aluminium. Now I'm going to turn it over and do the massive mating surface that goes to the bottom of the block. So I've been on this for like an hour now, and I finally got most of the silicone off. So this surface is now clean of all debris. Now I'm just going to thoroughly clean the inside and outside of this casing. done for today, but we have made some really nice progress. Just to recap what's been done. Here we have the block. It's been thoroughly cleaned with a wire brush. The block itself degreased. It's been painted on the front and rear of the actual block. This is going to be hidden anyway, just mainly for protection against the elements more than aesthetics, because we're not really going to see the engine anyway. Spent most of the day, although the video is probably 10 minutes long, I've spent probably 10 hours today on this. So removed the head gasket residue and also the silicone. Also picked out all the silicone out of all these oil ways with a cocktail stick, which took absolutely ages. Cleaned up that surface, cleaned up the mating surface that the lower casting would bolt onto to go onto the block. Obviously this has been cleaned up. Loads of silicone was on here and the other side, absolute nightmare. Cleaned up the oil splash guard. It looks quite rusty actually. I'm not sure if I'll be able to reuse that. It's only surface rust, but it's probably not a good idea. I'll have to do a little bit of research on whether that's normal. If it's not, I'll be replacing it. I've cleaned this out. This is the oil pickup, but I'm not 100% confident there's no bits left in there. So I'm going to have to look into again whether you know, I can reuse that, or am I going to be risking getting any bits into the engine once it's rebuilt. If there's any risk whatsoever, I will not be using that. And then here we have the sump, which has been sort of refurbished. Got all the silicone off, got every single piece of gunk, oil, bits, copper, metal shavings, all the horrible stuff from the inside of that has been removed. Also, the bottom had been pushed in a bit. Maybe it's hit something in the past, maybe someone jacked it up. It was only about ½ an inch, but I could tell it was in a dent, and I've tacked it back straight now, how it should be. And then obviously I've wire brushed it down, made sure there's no structural rust that's going to cause issues in the future. And then I've given it a coat of paint. So really good progress today on the engine for the Celica. Quite overwhelming when you look at all the bits everywhere, dirt everywhere. I've decided to break the rebuild into chunks. So rather than sort of not knowing where to start and just tackling it all at the same time, I'm going to get the bottom end assembled as soon as possible. And then once the bottom end's assembled, the casing's on, the guards in, the sump's on, pistons, conrods, crank, rings. Once they're all done, then I'm going to start thinking about that cylinder head. But until this is done, I'm not going to stress too much about the cylinder head and putting it back in the car. I think that's pretty much all I have to talk about. Hopefully you are enjoying these videos. Now we're back on the Celica. Let me know what you think in the comments. So I'll see you in the next one, where I should be gapping the piston rings, hopefully. But I'll have to do some research. Cheers guys.